BoJack Horseman is one of those rare shows that, in my opinion, only improved with each season. Over the course of its 6.5-year run, the series developed a level of maturity and self-awareness that most shows can only dream of, tackling issues from mental illness and addiction to corruption within the film industry through a uniquely tragicomic lens.
Now entering sleep mode.
You want to sleep with me?
However, perhaps even more impressive than the stories BoJack chose to tell was the increasingly experimental manner in which it told them. In an interview taken from The Art Before the Horse, creator Raphael Bob Waxberg says that at the start of the writing process for each episode, the writers would ask themselves a series of questions. Is there a special format to this episode? Is there a special way we want to tell this story? Or what are we trying to communicate with this episode? And we say, okay, that's an interesting idea to explore. How can we explore that through this story? Creative approaches to storytelling resulted in some of BoJack's most critically acclaimed episodes. And it's no coincidence that out of the series' 10 highest rated episodes on IMDb, all but one features some kind of interesting formal or structural element. But what is it about their inventiveness that makes these episodes so beloved? In The Anatomy of Story, John Truby explains the concept of the designing principle, which he defines as the overall strategy for how you will tell your story. A story's designing principles should be reducible to a single sentence, and when used correctly, it can help to unify form, structure, and content in a way that conveys the themes of a work with incredible emotional weight. This appears to be what Bob Waxberg is referring to when he talks about building an episode around an idea. And so, over my next 3 videos, I want to examine the designing principles behind 10 different BoJack episodes to show how they use perspective, time, and medium in unconventional ways to tell some very human stories about a cartoon horse. One of the major ways in which BoJack Horseman plays with structure is through its choices of perspective. In early episodes, we see events primarily from BoJack's point of view, with very little taking place while the eponymous character is off-screen.
Oh, and I bet eponymous was supposed to be a pun on pony.
In this respect, Season 1's Say Anything is a landmark episode for the series, because it represents the first use of an alternative point of view character in a major capacity, following a day in the life of Princess Carolyn as she struggles to balance her work life with her personal life. As the show shifted toward more of an ensemble piece, other characters received similar treatment. The aptly named Hooray Todd episode centers on Todd's problem of putting everyone else's needs before his own, while Feel Good Story focuses solely on Diane and her refusal to let herself be happy.
I would love to feel good.
Conversely, the absence of specific point of view characters can also be used to convey a message. BoJack's omission from the Season 4 premiere, for example, proves that everyone except Diane is just fine when he's not around.
We haven't talked in like a year, and that's actually been kind of working for me.
But by far the most notable use of this technique appears in Season 6's midpoint cliffhanger, a quick one while he's away, which tells the stories of several supporting characters without even a mention of the main cast by name. To understand the designing principle for this episode, it may be useful to distinguish it from the premise. Truby writes that most stories don't have a designing principle. They are standard stories told generically. That's the difference between a premise, which all stories have, and a designing principle, which only good stories have. The premise is concrete, it's what actually happens. The designing principle is abstract, it is the deeper process going on in the story. The synopsis for this episode reads, a reporter digs into the circumstances surrounding Sarah Lynn's death. Hollyhock goes to a party in New York City. We might also add that Kelsey and Gina are both struggling to advance their careers, but the key point here is that the premise simply summarises what happens in the story. To find the designing principle, we need to look at how these events are being conveyed. Bob Waxberg describes this episode as being about all the people hurt by BoJack, who he or the audience has maybe forgotten about. In fact, part of this episode's importance comes from its placement within the larger narrative. BoJack has begun making amends towards his closest friends and has moved on to a better life, but we're now faced with the difficult question of whether this absolves him of the damage caused by his past self. In the words of esteemed character actress Margot Martindale,
the people I've hurt, the lives I've ruined, are they washed clean as well?
The designing principle for this episode, then, could be tell the stories of the people BoJack has left behind and show how his actions continue to haunt them. This idea informs nearly every aspect of the episode, with each subplot examining a piece of the fallout from the events of previous seasons. Kelsey is still trying to claw her way out of director jail after one of BoJack's schemes got her fired from her last big movie.
I didn't break into the Nixon Library alone, and yet I'm the only one whose career has suffered. Why do you think that is?
At the same time, Sarah Lynn's mother hires 2 reporters to unravel the mystery of her daughter's fatal overdose. As they unwittingly follow the trail of Bojack's misdeeds to New Mexico, their inquiry seems bound to reopen old wounds for Penny, demonstrating the rippling consequences that the title character's immoral actions can have. Likewise, Gina's desire for a safe work environment is earning her a reputation for being difficult to work with, which leads to one of the series' most interesting uses of the dreaded F-bomb, when the memory of her being strangled causes her to panic on set.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
That this line is identical to the one used by Gina back in Season 5 only adds to this idea of Bojack's actions creating a knock-on effect. In fact, the only subplot that doesn't seem to fit this pattern is Hollyhocks, until the end reveal of Pete Repeat drives home the fact that there's an entire back catalogue of damaged people left in Bojack's wake whom we the audience have forgotten about. As Bob Waxberg puts it, with the Hollyhock story, the reveal is that actually it's also a setup for this whole other conversation about the collateral damage of Bojack Horseman. Back in Season 5, Bojack claimed that,
I'm the one who has suffered the most because of the actions of Bojack Horseman.
but by presenting the audience with these 4 separate stories and forcing us to discover the common thread for ourselves, this episode disproves that statement in the most devastating way possible.
Who is he?
Several Bojack episodes frame their events as stories told from the perspective of the characters. Stop the Presses, for example, is mainly comprised of a telephone conversation between Bojack and a customer service rep, resulting in frame narratives within frame narratives. Similarly, Interior Sub uses the censorship imposed upon its narrative by client confidentiality to hilarious effect, giving us the story of Bobo the Angsty Zebra and friends.
It's a story I heard once. I just changed all the names.
However, I think most people would agree that the show's smartest use of this technique is in Season 4's Ruthie. Expanding upon the ideas of the aforementioned Say Anything, this episode walks us through another bad day in the life of Princess Carolyn, only this time, the events are being relayed many years in the future by her great-great-great-granddaughter, Ruthie. The premise for this episode is, on one awful day, Princess Carolyn deals with rejection, deception, and loss. There's also a subplot about Bojack and Diane trying to track down Hollyhock's birth certificate, but this is only loosely related to the main plot, which instead revolves around Princess Carolyn receiving the news of her 5th miscarriage.
Ruthie, this story has gotten really dark.
It has a happy ending, I promise.
In this respect, the frame narrative acts like a safety net for the audience, because we know that no matter how dark the story gets, Princess Carolyn must ultimately succeed in continuing her lineage for Ruthie to exist. However, in the final seconds of the episode, it transpires that the events we've been witnessing in the future are pure fantasy, a story that Princess Carolyn invented to make herself feel better. In this moment, the frame narrative is revealed to be the framed narrative, and the audience's delusions of a happy ending are ruined. The designing principle for this episode might be, deceive the audience with a fabricated storyteller to demonstrate the pain of having one's false reality shattered. Deception is a running theme throughout the episode. First, Princess Carolyn discovers that the necklace she believed to be a family heirloom is merely cheap costume jewellery.
Somebody just told you a story. I'm sorry.
Next, she learns that Judah has been keeping the offer of a merger from her.
I was trying to protect you.
And later, she deliberately hides the truth about her miscarriage from Ralph to spare his feelings.
She wanted to tell him, but she also wanted to let him stay in his beautiful, hopeful reality.
These are all white lies told with good intentions, but they cause great pain for the deceived when their false realities come crashing down. And because the episode deceives us in a similar fashion, we get to experience firsthand the sadness that these characters feel when they are brought back to the real world. It's no wonder Princess Carolyn still fixes her necklace with a paperclip at the end of the episode.
But it's fake.
Yeah, well, it makes me feel better.
While most Bojack episodes are told from a detached, third-person perspective, some take advantage of the animated format to delve deep into the minds of the characters, providing us with subjective, first-person accounts of their struggles. The New Client, for example, populates its scenes with toiling duplicates of Princess Carolyn to express how overwhelmed she is by her new role as a mother, a feeling accentuated by the maddeningly repetitive rhythm of Ruthie's rattle. Even more intense is Season 4's Stupid Piece of Shit, which places the camera and microphone inside Bojack's head to give us a glimpse of the depressive internal monologue that he has to put up with every day.
Why don't you do the world a favor and swerve into oncoming traffic?
However, as much as I love this episode, when it comes to thematic unity, I have to give this one to Season 6's Good Damage, which refines the visual approach of its predecessor while making smarter use of its B-story. The premise for this episode is, Diane's depression lifts, but she's still struggling to start writing her memoir. reporters Paige and Max pay Penny a visit. What's most immediately notable here is the creative rendering of Diane's writer's block, and how this evolved throughout the story. First, we see that she is unable to focus, her stream of consciousness latching onto distractions such as the memory of a broken bowl that Mr. Peanut Butter repaired after reading an article on kintsugi.
The idea behind the Japanese art of kintsugi is that cracks in an object are part of its history.
Just as Princess Caroline's necklace symbolised the white lie, the kintsugi salad bowl represents Diane's belief that the neglect she experienced during her upbringing makes her special. She convinces herself that in order to give meaning to her years of misery, she must channel them into a book of autobiographical essays.
Because if I don't, that means that all the damage I got isn't good damage. It's just damage.
The designing principle for this episode could be, depict the emotional suffering that comes from romanticising past trauma. Unlike in Ruthie, this idea even informs the episode's B story, which sees Penny grappling with whether she should tell the press about her damaging encounter with Bojack. She and Diane are both confronted with the same essential problem of wanting to convert their trauma into something meaningful.
But if we can help other people, then it will have been for something.
Comparing these two characters' plights, it's clear that Diane's is more in line with the tortured artist myth that says great art can only come from suffering. This ideology, in conjunction with her inability to access her painful memories for inspiration, leads Diane to stop taking her antidepressants, which sends her spiralling through a depressive withdrawal. We now see the lines of her imagination become increasingly jagged, as her earlier self-doubts are replaced by harsh self-criticisms reminiscent of those in Bojack's head.
Your damage isn't interesting and you're unworthy of love.
Despite all this suffering, she still makes no progress with her memoir. In fact, her words only begin to flow when she stumbles upon the idea for a young adult fiction series. Here, the stark emptiness and half-baked sketches of Diane's essay pages are contrasted with the dense, colourful world of Ivy Tran, food court detective, implying that she'd do better to draw inspiration from her present rather than her past. By allowing the audience into Diane's headspace, the episode makes clear that neither she nor Penny has anything to gain from seeking good in their damage, and that when it comes to trauma, an escapist approach is sometimes best.
Then maybe write this other book. Maybe this book does that too.
Yeah?
Pushing the mental states category to the extreme, several Bojack episodes capture the characters at their lowest and highest points by combining their first-person perspectives with realities warped by drug use.
Oh, drug taking. That's cool.
The earliest example of this is Season 1's Downer ending, which saw the series begin to experiment with its animation style to give us a harrowing tour of Bojack's unconscious. Similarly, Season 3's That's Too Much Man uses jump cuts over long stretches of time to convey the intensity of his final bender with Sarah Lynn.
The disjointed blackout structure with the one flashback in the middle really confused our audience.
But undoubtedly the most terrifying instance of this comes in the form of the series' climax, The View from Halfway Down, which takes place entirely within the mind of a drowning, pilled-up Bojack. The synopsis for this episode simply reads, Bojack reconnects with faces from his past, but there's a lot more going on here under the surface. Speaking about the titular poem featured in the episode, Bob Waxberg says, I mentioned to Alison that it should be called The View from Halfway Down, which became the idea for how we thought about this episode, what it means to have a view from halfway down and how your perspective changes. The designing principle here could be, show how the descent into death changes one's perspective on life. This is reflected in many aspects of the episode, starting with the dinner conversation between the deceased characters looking back over their lives. Perhaps the most important distinction comes between Herb, who considered suicide but was later glad not to have gone through with it, and Secretariat, who appears to have no regrets about his own suicide.
Where's your follow-through? It's like you didn't even want to kill yourself.
The episode likens Secretariat's physical descent as he jumped from a bridge with Bojack's metaphorical descent into unconsciousness. Its dreamworld setting is designed around this spatial metaphor of being halfway down, with the various stages between life and death stacked vertically.
The darkness is a metaphor for darkness.
At the very top is the bridge itself, representing life not yet taken and the freedom to choose.
The view from up there.
Below this, Bojack lies face down in his pool, having made his choice and surrendered himself to fate. And beneath his floating body awaits the purgatory-like showroom where doomed souls give their last hurrah, before finally falling through death's doorway into nothingness.
Oh, Bojack, no. There is no other side. This is it.
The designing principle is most beautifully expressed through Secretariat's poem, which tells of how he came to regret his decision only once it was too late to stop the fall.
It's all okay? It would be.
Were you not now halfway down?
This was presumably inspired by interviews with real survivors, but the fact that it comes from him of all people, despite his earlier cockiness, helps to make this the most powerful anti-suicide message I've ever heard.
All I'd give for Toast to touch the safety back at top. I changed my mind. I changed my mind. I don't want to...
According to supervising director Mike Hollingsworth, these events take place over about 30 seconds in real time, but by allowing us to peer into Bojack's psyche, the episode manages to stretch this out into one of the most suspenseful half hours in animation history. The ending sees Bojack complete this process of shifting perspective on life. Just like Secretariat, he changes his mind, but no amount of running can save him as death rushes upwards to consume everything.
Yeah. My day was good.
BoJack Horseman plays with perspective in some really unique ways. It always knows which point of view characters to make use of and which to exclude. It frames certain narratives to draw attention to their fictionality, sometimes to devastating effect, and it isn't afraid to let the audience inside the characters' heads to experience their mental states, whether on a daily basis or a 6-week bender. However, the reason these methods work so well in the episodes I've discussed here is because they're all natural extensions of their respective designing principles. By crafting each episode around a central idea, Bob Waxberg and his team consistently delivered stories that were as memorable as they were meaningful. And so in my next video, I'll be breaking down how 3 more BoJack episodes use time to tell poignant tales about the past and present. See you then.
Anyways, like and subscribe.